The night always felt heavier in our house after everything that happened, as if the walls themselves carried memories that refused to fade. I still remember the way silence wrapped around every corner after our family began to break apart, not because of fate, but because of people who pretended to love us. It started slowly, small betrayals hidden under forced smiles. But eventually the truth rose like smoke from a burning home, impossible to ignore. My parents always believed that loyalty was our family's strongest pillar, that nothing from the outside could shake us, but they never considered the danger of betrayal growing from within. The first crack appeared when my elder brother began changing in ways none of us understood. He stopped joining us at dinner, stopped laughing with us, stopped looking us in the eye. At first we thought it was stress from work, but the truth was far darker and far closer than we imagined. It wasn't until my mother found strange messages on his old phone that we realized he had been manipulated by someone who wanted to ruin us. The messages came from a person my family once trusted more than anyone, our own uncle. The shock of it didn't hit us at once. It arrived like a slow poison. My uncle had always acted kind, always offering advice, always pretending to care. But behind that false warmth, he was building a plan to break our family from the inside. He convinced my brother that he deserved more, that he was being controlled, that our parents didn't trust him enough. And slowly, without us noticing, he turned my brother into a weapon against the very people who raised him. It was painful watching the change, but at the time, we didn't know who was pulling the strings. Things escalated the night my parents confronted him. My brother exploded with anger, shouting things that weren't his own words, repeating lies my uncle had planted in his mind. I watched my father's face fall, not out of shock but heartbreak. My mother's hands trembled as she tried to calm him, but he pushed her away. Not violently, but enough to show he wasn't the same person anymore. That night ended with him walking out of our home, leaving behind the family that had loved him more than anything. And the worst part was that my uncle was waiting for him outside, smiling like he had won. I saw it all from the window, and that is when something inside me changed. That night was the beginning of everything, the destruction, the truth, and eventually the revenge. Our home became quieter after that, but silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of wounds we didn't know how to heal. My father tried to stay strong, but even strength has limits, and betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from your own blood. My mother cried when she thought I wasn't watching, whispering prayers for my brother's safety, still blinded by hope that he would return. I didn't feel that hope. I felt something else, a growing fire inside me, a need to uncover the truth and pull our family out of the pit we had been pushed into. My uncle thought we were weak without my brother. He thought we would fall apart. What he didn't know was that he had awakened the wrong person. He had made me see the truth, and I wasn't going to sit quietly while he destroyed the people I loved. I started tracing everything, every conversation, every rumor, every financial move he made. And the deeper I went, the clearer his intentions became. He didn't want just power. He wanted everything my father had built. He wanted control of the family business, control of our home, control of every piece of dignity we had left. And he thought he could use my brother as a pawn. But he underestimated the one thing he had no idea I possessed: my ability to stay silent until the right moment came. I watched, I learned, and I prepared. Because revenge isn't taken in anger. It is built slowly, silently, and with precision. And I promised myself that I would make him face the consequences of every wound he caused, even if I had to do it alone. The days that followed felt like I was walking through shadows that stretched longer than they should. My uncle's influence kept spreading, reaching places we didn't even know he had access to. My father's business partners began avoiding him, silently distancing themselves as if they were afraid of something he didn't know about. Papers disappeared from drawers, contracts that had been secure for years suddenly came under question, and people who once trusted us with everything started acting like strangers. My mother tried to remain composed, but I could see the worry behind her eyes. The walls of our home echoed with the weight of betrayal, and even though my brother wasn't there, his absence was louder than any argument. It felt as if every part of our life was being slowly replaced by uncertainty, one careful step at a time. My uncle didn't attack openly. Instead, he drained us quietly, making sure the damage felt like our own fault. I remember watching my father sit alone in the living room, staring at documents he used to read with confidence. Now, he looked at them as though they were written to defeat him. I wanted to tell him everything I knew, to show him the messages I had found, the patterns I had traced, but I couldn't, not yet. Revenge works best when the truth comes out at the perfect moment, and I wasn't ready to reveal my hand. So I stayed silent, pretending to be just another child in the house grieving the loss of her brother's presence. No one knew how much I was watching. No one knew how much I understood. I studied every move my uncle made, who he met, where he went, what he gained. His strategy was obvious once you saw it from the outside. He was stealing my brother's loyalty while stealing my father's dignity. Everything changed the day I discovered the secret meeting. I had followed my uncle to a quiet cafe away from the city, hidden behind tall trees and dust-covered walls. From a distance, I saw my brother sitting with him, looking exhausted, confused, and far older than he had looked a few weeks before. He wasn't the villain in this story. He was the victim who didn't know he was being manipulated. My uncle leaned forward, whispering in his ear, feeding him the same poison I had seen in the messages. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. My brother's face told me everything. He believed the lies. He believed that we had betrayed him. And that was the moment I realized that rescuing him wasn't just a part of my revenge. It was the entire reason for it. On my way back home that day, I felt something shift inside me. Fear faded, replaced by a kind of clarity I had never felt before. My uncle thought he had control, but he had no idea how closely I had been following his footsteps. He didn't know the pieces I had already collected, the documents I had copied, the conversations I had recorded, the witnesses who had unknowingly revealed his hidden plans. Every secret he tried to bury, I was there, quiet, unnoticed, and determined. Revenge wasn't only about destroying what he built. It was about restoring what he tried to steal. And I knew that when the time came, the truth would be powerful enough to break every game he had played against us. The first ripple of change began when I started connecting the people my uncle had manipulated into trusting him. Most of them didn't know they were being used. They thought they were supporting a man who wanted to help the family, someone who cared about unity. They didn't see the trap until it tightened around them. I approached them one by one, not as someone seeking revenge, but as someone searching for answers. Some were hesitant, some were frightened, but eventually they spoke. What they told me painted a picture much darker than I expected. My uncle had been planning this takeover for years, long before my brother was dragged into it. He had built alliances behind my father's back, created financial loopholes, and presented himself as the only responsible member of the family. The deeper I went, the more painful the truth became. He had used my brother not because he cared about him, but because he needed someone young, emotional, and easy to manipulate. My brother became the perfect tool, placed in the perfect position, to break my parents emotionally while my uncle attacked their business from the inside. I felt anger burn through me, but I didn't allow it to blind me. My revenge needed patience, not rage. Every night, after everyone fell asleep, I would sit with the notes I had written, building a timeline of events, connecting every hidden thread, every lie, every betrayal. My uncle's plan was complicated, but not perfect. He had left traces, small ones, but enough for someone determined enough to find them. My father remained unaware of the storm about to break above him. He thought he was losing his business due to miscalculations, not realizing a family member he trusted had been the one pushing the ground from beneath his feet. My mother, despite her heartbreak, tried to hold the house together, but I could see she was breaking slowly. She still believed my brother would come home one day with apologies and explanations. She didn't know that he had been dragged so far into the darkness that he couldn't see our side anymore. I watched her every day and promised myself that she would not remain in this pain forever. She deserved truth. She deserved justice. She deserved to see her family stand again. My uncle continued his game confidently, unaware of how close I was. He underestimated me because I stayed silent. He underestimated my age, my patience, my observations. And that was his biggest mistake. I wasn't planning simple revenge. I was planning an exposure so powerful that no lie could cover it again. And when it came, I wanted it to destroy only the guilty, not the innocent ones who had been caught in the crossfire of his greed. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, while checking old files in my father's study, I discovered a sealed envelope shoved behind other documents. It contained copies of land agreements, business contracts, and letters signed under pressure by people who had trusted my father. Attached to them was a small note, written in my uncle's handwriting, containing instructions that clearly showed he had orchestrated everything. These papers were enough to expose him publicly. My hands trembled, not out of fear, but because I realized that the moment I had been preparing for was finally within reach. I knew I couldn't show this to my parents immediately. I needed to gather the last missing pieces, the ones that connected my brother to this entire plan without turning him into a criminal. He was manipulated, not malicious. I wanted justice, not cruelty. Over the next few days, things at home grew worse. My father received notices about financial investigations. Neighbors began whispering. Relatives distanced themselves. My uncle had spread rumors so cleanly that most people believed my father had been hiding things for years. My mother stopped sleeping. She sat by the window waiting for a miracle. I watched all of this and kept my emotions buried because the time for silence was almost over. I had collected everything I needed, and now all that remained was the final step: bringing my brother back from my uncle's control before I exposed the truth. I confronted him first. Not with anger, not with accusations, but with the truth. I showed him the evidence, the messages, the signatures, the plans. At first, he refused to believe me. His loyalty to our uncle was built on lies he thought were real. But when he saw the documents with his own eyes, the illusion shattered. He realized he had been used, deeply, cruelly, carelessly. I watched the guilt wash over him, but I didn't let him sink into self-blame. I needed him strong. I needed him on our side. And most importantly, I needed him to understand that the fight had just begun. Together, we prepared for the moment that would change everything. The confrontation wouldn't be private. It would be in front of the very people my uncle had manipulated, the same people who trusted him blindly. Because true revenge isn't about shouting the truth. It's about revealing it so clearly that no one can deny it. The day of truth arrived quietly, without warnings or storms. My father thought he had been called to a business meeting, unaware that this meeting would rewrite everything that had happened over the past months. My uncle entered confidently, surrounded by people who believed in him. He had no idea that my brother and I had arrived earlier, prepared, calm, and holding the evidence that would unravel every lie he had woven. When the meeting began, my uncle spoke first, pretending to be concerned about my father's mistakes. His voice was smooth, his words rehearsed. But his confidence lasted only until I placed the first file on the table. The room shifted. People grew quiet. My uncle frowned, confused, then nervous, then furious. My brother stepped forward, telling them everything. How he had been manipulated, how lies were fed to him, how he had been turned against his own family. His voice didn't tremble. It carried truth that broke every false image my uncle had built. I watched my uncle's face as the evidence spread across the table. One by one, the allies he had built began stepping away, realizing they had been supporting a man who had betrayed his own blood. My father looked at me, then at my brother, his eyes filled with a mix of shock and pride. My mother quietly cried, not out of sadness, but relief. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was calm, controlled, and final. My uncle tried to defend himself, but every sentence he spoke collapsed under the weight of the truth. His empire of lies fell apart in a single afternoon. In the days that followed, everything began returning to its place. People apologized, relationships repaired slowly, and my brother worked to rebuild the trust he had almost destroyed. My uncle faced consequences for everything he had done: legal, social, and emotional. Our home felt lighter, the air clearer, as if the shadows that once wrapped around us had finally dissolved. And even though I never introduced myself in this story, my presence had shaped every part of it. I learned that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it is about restoring balance, revealing truth, and bringing justice to the people who deserve peace. This was not a story of hate. It was a story of strength, patience, and the quiet power of truth.